Okay, let's dive in and cover what the 10 myths are about introverts in sales. First up, introverts are not good at public speaking or presentations. You know what I have to say to that? Er, because introverts are actually effective public speakers and presenters when given the opportunity to prepare and practice. Introverts, if you try and just throw them to the front of the room to speak about an issue they don't know, they're not familiar with, they're not going to do well. Of course, most people can't. But extroverts, since they love talking, they kind of they can fake it till you make it. But introverts, especially myself, that's like a panic moment. That's a nightmare. But if we're going to present, we can present. We just need the time and put in the work behind the scenes to make it effective. And that's what we're going to focus on. We know that when we get to a level of detail and depth of knowledge, that's where we get our confidence and our energy. That's where we can get in front of those people and put on a really persuasive argument. So the first myth is going to be debunked. And we'll talk more about each of these later to say, okay, here's what we're really going to focus on. Here's the specific things that you can do to work on this. But for now, we're just going to cover all 10, and then we'll cover them in detail afterward. Second piece, or second myth, is that introverts are not persuasive. And for that one, it is, again, not true. Introverts can be pretty persuasive when they use researched arguments, when they understand the methodologies that are required to tell stories, that are required to get that emotional appeal and to sell. If you understand why people buy and, what makes them not buy, you're going to be so much more effective and you're going to be more persuasive. If you just go in there and start guessing, well, you're really not doing yourself any favors. So if you can adopt a subtle but authentic approach to what you're doing and understand the person that you're talking to, you're going to be able to actually persuade them better than any extrovert can. You're not trying to get right to the sale. You're trying to put in the work first to understand, okay, who are you? What is your problem? Is that really your problem or is it deeper than that? That is where introverts are going to thrive. Next up is that introverts cannot build strong relationships. So again, not true. Introverts are especially great at building deep, meaningful connections. Extroverts typically have a lot of friends, but they may not have a lot of deep relationships, whereas introverts really focus on spending the time with a lower number of people to get to know them better, to understand who they are and their story, and to get to more thoughtful conversations. Extroverts, you could think of, how's the weather? How's the family? Pretty shallow conversation topics. They got to cover a lot of ground. But introverts really, they remember people. They want to keep going deeper and really understand, how are you, not how are you. So that is how introverts can thrive there, and that's how they can build strong relationships. Number 4 is that introverts are ineffective at lead gen and sales prospecting. False. Here's how introverts can turn that around. Introverts actually excel at lead gen and sales prospecting when they're able to use a process that they understand better and then that they can control and design these funnels. If you try and have an introvert do cold calling, that's pretty much nightmare fuel for many of us. But if you're able to have an introvert instead do lead gen and sales prospecting, first by doing research, focusing on attention to detail, and generating, again, that deep level connection with potential clients through genuine and thoughtful interactions, that's where they're going to thrive. And that's where they're going to turn up better leads. And the ones that they do turn up are going to convert at a higher rate than an extrovert can. Number 5 is that introverts lack the energy and enthusiasm required for sales. Sure, introverts are not always bubbly. We don't always want to be around people all the time. And that's kind of a quality for us. I enjoy my quiet time, and I'm sure you do too. So what we're going to do is we're going to be energetic and enthusiastic when we have to be, but we're going to be mindful of our batteries. And we're going to think about our energy as a battery that gets depleted. So when we have to show up, we're going to be able to focus and give someone a high quality, experience with us. but we're not going to just overextend our stay and kind of lose our luster and not really seem like we want to be there, or kind of have a nasty attitude, or just seem like you're ready to fall asleep. So introverts know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And when they do that, they can really exhibit the energy and enthusiasm required at the right time. Number 6 is that introverts do not like to network. And this one is false, because introverts, they do like to network, but not in the same way. When I think of networking and how I like to do it, I don't like to work a huge room. I generally know who's going to be there. I know what I want to talk about. And then I have deeper, longer conversations with select people kind of that I studied in advance or I kind of plan to meet. Whereas extroverts seem to more bounce around the room, and whoever they meet is great. And again, they're talking about shallow topics most of the time. So when introverts network, they can talk at a more meaningful level, develop those relationships that are key to sales because it builds trust and relationships. So we're going to keep that in mind. Number 7 is that introverts do not enjoy talking to people. Sure, we like our quiet time, but like I mentioned before, we definitely prefer quality over quantity. We don't dislike people, but there's a time and place for talking to people, but there's also that alone time where we get to think and be with ourselves that we also appreciate. So when we do that, we can build our network, we can build relationships, but it just has to be on our terms, and we have to ensure that we're playing to our strengths and our qualities. Number 8 is that introverts plain can't do sales. It's not a line of work for them. They shouldn't be worried about convincing people, or they should just let the extroverts handle sales. But introverts, when they focus on selling through this process that we're going to cover in this course, they can outperform extroverts time and time again, because introverts tend to want to use something that's more formulaic, something that's more planned, something that's requiring practice. And then we study where we're not good, and we work on getting better there. Whereas extroverts, they kind of take the same approach each time. They're focusing a lot more on talking, not on listening. So introverts, we understand what we do well that eventually converts and leads to sales, and we do that. And we don't do the things extroverts do that drain our batteries. Number 9, introverts cannot handle rejection. Well, sure. For most people, rejection is hard. And the thought is that introverts who are loners, this is just a killing blow for them. It's going to destroy their confidence and their morale. But actually, introverts like to think more and reflect on their performance, and are really focused more on growth and understanding what worked and what didn't work. So even when introverts have rejection, introverts handle it better because they actually reflect and adapt, whereas extroverts just try and work the numbers harder, really without understanding what's working and what isn't. So introverts can handle rejection because they learn and grow from it. And then number 10, introverts are too shy to sell. Yes, as I mentioned, we prefer our solitude, but what we don't lack is, because we do the preparation and because we understand the issues and problems so well, is we don't lack confidence or social skills with the people we know when it's time to perform. We come prepared and we know what we're talking about. For me, it would be like a nightmare to try and talk to someone and sell them something that really was a product or service I didn't know, I didn't like, I didn't think it was right for them. I couldn't do it. I think a lot of other introverts are going to be the same way, where when it's time to perform and all the pieces are lined up, we could be killers. So these are the 10 myths that are associated with introverts and us not being good salespeople. And as you've seen here, we're going to debunk them. So in the next part of this course, we're going to go into more detail on each of the 10 myths, and then we're going to start to develop action items and tips for how you can take these, leverage them, and then how you can walk away from this course knowing what you have to do to get better and start selling.